Hi, I'm Nandita of Curry Cravings. I'm glad you could join me today as I introduce to you my newest cookbook, 7 Pots of Tea. I bet you've enjoyed some green tea, some black tea, or maybe even a cup of chai. But did you know that there are so many more beverages from India other than chai? Most of these brews are based in Ayurveda, which is actually an ancient but a simple way to make sure that we lead healthier lives. It is all about learning to listen to your body and eat and drink accordingly. Something that we're trying to do anyways. Since there are no cookbooks about chai or the dozens of brews from India, I decided to write a cookbook about it, and you will love what I've put together in 7 Pots of Tea. 7 Pots of Tea is the only book of its kind, the first book of its kind to give readers an easy and approachable structure of beverages that fits into our lives. From dozens of recipes for different kinds of herbal brews, chai recipes, nosh recipes, this book is a must-have for any food lover's bookshelf. It was frankly difficult to pick from the dozens of recipes from my book, but today's presentation is short, so I'm going to showcase only a few things from my book. A couple of brews and a few pantry essentials that I bet you'll want to make and make them often. In addition to these, I often post videos of some of the brews, some of the recipes on Instagram at Curry Cravings. You'll find me there. I'm excited to share these dishes with you in a short presentation with lots of fresh produce from Melissa's. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, let's make a tisane from my book, 7 Pots of Tea. This one is a hibiscus, pomegranate, and fennel tisane. I have to thank Melissa's Produce for sponsoring this drink, and let me show you how we're going to make this tea. A tisane is a brew that is made without tea or the tea leaves, so it has no green tea or black tea leaves and therefore is caffeine free. In this brew, we're going to use fresh pomegranate seeds, the pods of the hibiscus flower, and one of my favorite spices in Indian cooking, the Lucknowi fennel, which is a much finer fennel than ordinary fennel seeds. I have a liter of water started up here. It's in a kettle, and I'm going to turn it on. And in this kettle, directly to the kettle, I'm going to add about half a cup of fresh pomegranate seeds. Now in here, I'm going to add the pods of the hibiscus flower. Now this is a special variant of hibiscus, and these ones are medicinal and they open up like this. When you add it into your hot water, it's going to start getting really bright and colorful. For this liquid, I'm going to add a handful, which is about 7 or 8 pods, and I'm going to add a large pinch of fennel seeds. The recipe is in my book, and right now I'm eyeballing for a much larger pot, but you'll see how the color changes. Pomegranate is extremely essential in Ayurvedic cooking and Ayurveda itself because it's a really wonderful fruit to eat. It is astringent and sweet and sour, and is also considered cooling. There is a good amount of tartness that comes from the hibiscus pods that is also reflected in the pomegranate. And the hibiscus pods are astringent and sweet, they're also cooling. The fennel seeds are sweet, astringent, and pungent, and they too are cooling. To balance out all the flavors that are in this brew, I'm going to use some honey. You can use whatever honey that you prefer. This one is particularly tasty, so I'm going to save this for my cup. And in order to get my serving started, I have individual little jars. And to kind of add a little pizzazz to this drink, even when you're serving, I'm going to add about a teaspoon of pomegranate straight into my serving container. So they'll look like this in here, and when you add the liquid, they kind of dance around, and it's nice to see them in your jar. What I will add to this is about a tablespoon of honey straight into the jar. So in here, in the bottom, is about a tablespoon of honey and a good bit of fresh pomegranate seeds. Now look at this brew. It has gone from just plain water and a bunch of ingredients to this really bright red colored liquid, the tisane. So this tea will be ready in a minute or so, and when it turns off, I'm going to pour it directly into my serving container. Now that the spices have done dancing around in the hot water, this brew is ready. It is aromatic and tart, but in here we've got some honey to balance out the flavors. So and one of the reasons I like to do this is that I can portion it out and put it away in the refrigerator and then cool it and have it as a chilled drink later on. So here you have another tisane from my book, 7 Pots of Tea. I hope you get to enjoy it. Cheers. Hi, let's make Suleimani chai today. This tea is a black tea. It uses a bunch of different spices, and let me walk you through some of them. It uses Meyer lemons, ginger, it uses palm sugar, a premium black tea, and in this case I'm using an Assam black tea. It also uses cinnamon, and in this case I have a premium cinnamon that Melissa's have provided me. And it uses cardamom and saffron. So let's get started and let me show you how to make a beautiful cup of Suleimani chai. We're going to start with 2 cups of water. And one by one we're going to add the ingredients directly into the pot. So we have some cardamom, and I'm going to start from here going the other way. I'm just cracking the cardamom very gently on my chopping board or on my surface, just enough to open the pot up a little bit. You don't have to do a huge production for it, so you just have to open it up a little bit. I'm going to add a couple pieces of the cinnamon, about 2 small pieces of ginger, fresh ginger, and I'm going to wait for this to come to a boil before I add any tea leaves. Now, in order for this to work, I want to make sure that the water that I'm using in here has a very nice robust aroma from the spices itself, and I'm going to let those come to the surface before I add any tea leaves to this. So this might take a minute. Let's hang in there. Now while this is boiling, let me tell you a little bit about the palm sugar. Palm sugar comes in a little candy kind of form like this, and essentially this is the sap of a very specific kind of palm, Namara palm, and this is sweet. It is like raw sugar, so if you cannot find it, that's okay. Go ahead and find a raw sugar to use in this. This tea is fragrant and delicious even without the sugar. This just adds a little extra special touch. Now the water is beginning to boil, and it feels like from the 2 cups, 1 pod of cardamom might not be enough, so I'm actually going to add another pod and just let it come to boil again. So there we go. Just open the pod up, put as much in there as you can. Now per cup of tea I usually put in about a teaspoon of black tea, so I'm going to dust that straight in. And as you can tell, it'll take a minute for the tea to settle down to the bottom of the pot and begin to boil. But once it does, the color just goes bright amber. And you can tell that it is already aromatic because of the spices that you put in here. But you're beginning to see the balance between all the flavors come together. Now, I had to turn the heat down just because it had started to boil, but you can tell the color in here is a very nice golden amber. And this tea needs a few more pieces to it for it to finish. So what I will start by doing is take a little bit of the palm sugar, and I'm going to see if I can grate it straight into my cup. This is a rather hard sugar to use, but it just adds a little extra flavor into your tea. So you can add as much or as little as you like, and as you can tell, it's quite dense. So I'm going to leave that alone for now and work with this tea and see if this is going to be enough. If not, I'm going to add some more. Another essential ingredient to this tea is saffron. And I've mentioned this several times before, that saffron is an expensive spice, but it's also very warming to you. So I always recommend to folks that they don't take the entire bin of saffron and dump it into their tea, but choose selectively and maybe choose maybe 2 or maybe 3 strands per cup and directly add it into the cup so that you preserve the saffron and you preserve the flavors in here. And you don't lose it to all the tea leaves that are in your little pot. So in you go. So now these 2 are in here, and the last finishing touch I want to add, and I'm going to add this directly into my pot of tea, is a little squirt of lemon. And you can leave it in there for a second for it to kind of get the flavors in there. You can squeeze in some lemon juice, and this tea is about ready to be served. So here you go. This, my friends, is your Suleimani chai. Fragrant, bright in color, and filled with a lot of good spices. This is a great tea for the winter time, and there's more information about the tea in my book, 7 Pots of Tea, and you'll find out how to make it and how to enjoy it. So here, enjoy your next cup of Suleimani chai. Hi, let's make turmeric milk or turmeric sheerpak. When I was little, my mom used to make this all the time, except she didn't put all the ingredients that I'm going to put in here. And believe me when I tell you, if she had just put a couple more ingredients, I would be drinking a lot more of it. This is a rather simple preparation. It's called sheerpak in Ayurveda because it uses milk. And if you're using a dairy alternate for your recipe, you may want to try making the concoction in plain water first and then adding your dairy alternate to it later on. So let me get started and let me show you what else is going on in here. Turmeric milk or turmeric sheerpak or haldi sheerpak includes a couple of really fragrant and delicious ingredients, but also good for you kind of ingredients. The star ingredient of this drink is turmeric, and turmeric is available in 2 forms in the marketplace. You find a fresh version as well as the dried powdered version. For this recipe, we're going to use the dried powdered version, but I wanted to show you what the fresh one looks like. It looks a little bit like a cousin of ginger, and you find them in clamshells. In this case, Melissa's has been providing the turmeric to most of the grocery stores around here. So earlier I was not able to find them as easily as I do now. But for this recipe, we're going to use a dried form of turmeric, which you can see here. We're also going to use nutmeg, and this is powdered nutmeg in here, and we're going to use cardamom. Cardamom comes in a pod form. It looks like that, as triangular pods, and to break them, you want to get to the part that doesn't have the little pointy edge. You want to try and break them from the other side, from the blunt end, and crush it down onto your chopping board or your chopping surface, and it will open up, and then you can put it into your mortar and pestle and put it in whatever you need to put it. Now in here I have a small saucepan and I have 2 cups of milk, so let me show you how to make a haldi sheerpak or a turmeric milk. I'm going to start my saucepan with 2 cups of milk, and I would recommend you using cold milk to get it started so that it has some time to work the magic with the spices. In here I'm going to put a little less than a 1/4 teaspoon of powdered turmeric, and that I usually put in first because turmeric, you want the milk to take in all the flavors of turmeric. I'm literally going to put in a pinch of powdered nutmeg. I'm going to put in about 3 of the cardamom pods that are crushed directly into the milk. I want to give it a little stir to make sure that the spices are evenly distributed. Turmeric is very healing, so this drink is often made in times when you're recovering from an illness, a cold or a cough or a light fever or something like that. All the ingredients except the milk in this case are warming, so they help your body heal, and especially the turmeric. This is a great way to add turmeric into your diet. While this is boiling, let me show you what I'm going to do to sweeten it. I'm going to add some of the honey that I have. Melissa sent me this wonderful honeycomb honey. So I'm going to use this in my cup. And normally people will just add the honey to your hot liquid. And what it does is it breaks down the honey a little differently. So you don't want to do that, and just keep the honey in your own cup. So you want to take a little teaspoon of it, to taste of course, and leave it in there. And what you're going to do is you're literally going to pour the warm milk on top of it. So I'm going to give this another stir. And I'm doing this to ensure that the milk doesn't settle to the bottom and doesn't scorch at the bottom. And milk tends to do that very quickly and very easily. And if you don't watch this, the pot will boil over and you'll have a bunch of turmeric milk to clean up. So be careful on that. And it's almost coming to a boil. You'll start seeing the bubbles and the foam kind of form at the top. So you want to stir it a little bit. And as you can tell in the milk, the turmeric has really started to show its color in here. You can start seeing how beautifully yellow this is. It's a bright yellow. And look at this color versus this color. I'm going to bring it up close just so you can tell the difference. This is about ready to boil over. So I'm going to turn this down and take it off the heat before I have a mess. Caught it in time! And because I was stirring, I can tell from the feel of my spoon, of my teaspoon, that it hadn't really caught on the bottom as much as I would have thought. So this is all a great thing. This also means that your milk is also going to taste good. So here you go. It has stopped steaming a little bit. And let me reach over and find a sieve. Alright, this is a handy dandy tool in your kitchen. And the only reason you're using a sieve is to catch these pods. These are completely edible. So if you like something to chew on while you're drinking your turmeric milk, you're more than welcome to leave them in there. But this makes for a really rich and decadent cup of turmeric milk. Enjoy, and here's to good health. I bet you've used ghee at some point in time, but today I'm going to show you how to make a turmeric ghee or a turmeric grita. I recently discovered turmeric grita when I was researching for my book 7 Pots of Tea, and I discovered that it is such an easy thing to make that you're going to want to make it also. And for this recipe, I'm using fresh turmeric from Melissa's. Thank you, Melissa, for providing me some really good fresh turmeric. So let me show you some of the ingredients that go in here. Of course, you're going to want your fresh turmeric. It slices very nicely and you make really thin slices. And this is about a thumb's worth of turmeric for a single stick of butter. Now this cultured butter comes really handy in making turmeric grita because it really adds a nice grainy texture to the ghee, which is what you're looking for. In addition to the butter, you're also going to need black pepper. Now black whole peppercorns, you don't want powdered pepper, you just want whole black peppercorns. So let's get started on how to make turmeric grita. In my saucepan, I'm going to open up this stick of butter. I'm using a smaller pan because I'm just showing you the recipe for this one stick of butter. As you can tell, the butter itself is really golden, and you start with a cold stick of butter, not room temperature. It won't harm it terribly, it just makes it easier on you when you're trying to put the ingredients together. So I'm going to let this start and let it melt. And as it starts melting, I'm going to add the turmeric, the sliced turmeric, directly into my pot. And while it's melting, I added the fresh turmeric to it. This happens often when you're trying to cook down butter to make ghee, where it'll start to sputter. And that's okay, it's just part of the cooking process. You want to swirl it around so the butter and the turmeric gets to mix a little bit and the temperature evens out a little nicely. I'm adding a pinch of whole peppercorns directly into the ghee or into the melted butter at this point. Temperature goes up again. And if you wish, you can stir it along every now and then just to make sure that the butter is not just sitting in one spot. You want to move the butter along just a little bit by stirring it around to make sure that the melting butter doesn't stick to the bottom of your pan. And you also want to use a heavy bottom saucepan so the melting butter and the ghee that forms doesn't stick to the bottom of your pan, or else the ghee will start to burn. I'm going to set this aside and watch. Now, as this happens, let me show you what the end result looks like. It's going to look like this, a bright golden colored ghee. I had made this a couple of weeks ago, and this is, look at how golden the color is. I'm going to set this down here. As you can tell, the butter is going to start clarifying and separating into the milk solids and the fat that's part of the butter. You want that to happen because you're going to separate out and take only the fat. You'll hear it crackle, which is fine. If it starts to sputter, maybe you want to move it away from the stove for a minute, but don't walk away from this or the butter and the ghee will burn. When do you know when it's done? That's a great question. This ghee is kind of a little harder to tell than when you're making regular ghee because it has turmeric in it. One of the ways to tell that it's done is when the crackling either reduces or the bubbles start getting really small. So right now it's still crackling, which means that it's losing all the water that was in here. Now this is being done on an induction stove and it's set at 600. But if you're using it on a regular stove top, keep it to a medium high and turn it down if you need to, if you think it's going too fast for you, and it won't hurt the recipe. As I'm moving it in here, I'm holding it up close to the side camera and you'll see how the ghee is actually rather golden in color. It's mostly done, but you need a minute or so more. And on the side I'm going to tell you what I have ready to go for this. And there is a practical reason for keeping this. I have one of my canning jars with a nice lid, and I have a little dish underneath. I'll be using a little sieve. Let me go back to this. I think this is done. You can see on the side of the pan, when I tip the side of the pan, you'll see how it's gone brown on there. And that means that it has done what it can do with the butter and getting the fat separated out. Now it's just foaming. So I want to move this off from the heat for a little bit. And you can see it's still foaming, but it's mostly clear. Now in this state, this is a good point in time to actually take a pause from it and not try to strain it immediately because the ghee is still quite hot. And I'm going to move all these things to the side so you can see very clearly what will happen. The reason I do this is to ensure that there are no accidents with this ghee. Believe me, you do not want hot ghee splattered all over your kitchen counter. So having a little pan underneath helps kind of hold that utensil in place. There are, if for any reason your jar is old, or if your jar is not in good shape and it decides to crack and it cannot take the heat, you'll at least know within the first minute or so. All right, it has stopped steaming, so I am going to gently pour this and go as slow as you need to make sure that there is some cooling happening while you're also pouring. And it's all in here. Now, let me show you something else. I'll bring this closer. This is what remains in your sieve. If you wish, and this is completely optional, if you wish to return some of the turmeric back into the ghee so that it continues to season and continues to stay there, or just as a reminder for you that this is the turmeric grita so you don't accidentally use it in something else, you're more than welcome to take one or two of the pieces of the turmeric and stick them back into the hot ghee while it's still on hand. And I'm going to add a couple pieces of the pepper back in here. Turmeric and pepper benefit from being around each other, and they're great. They work wonderfully together. I'm going to hold this up. This is so pretty. Oh wow, this is absolutely wonderful. This makes my kitchen smell really, really good. And we're going to use this turmeric grita in a couple dishes later on. So hang in there and come back for the next recipe because this is what you're going to be using. I'll talk to you in a bit. Now let's put that beautiful, gorgeous turmeric grita to use and make a fantastic gluten-free snack that you're going to love. So I have a lot of ingredients for this dish, and when you see the recipe in my book 7 Pots of Tea, you may feel intimidated by it, but believe me when I tell you, this recipe uses as few or as many ingredients as you may have on hand. One of the trick ingredients in this is the use of tapioca. Tapioca pearls look white and they're often snow white. This is not boba, so don't use boba for this one, but these tapioca pearls have been soaked. They don't come like this. They come in, these are the ones that you get in the grocery store. They are dry, and these are not edible in this form. So to use them, you put them in a fine mesh colander or in a sieve, run them through about 2 cups or 3 cups of cold tap water, or hold it under the faucet in your kitchen and let the water run through. Keep that wet, damp, and just rinsed tapioca pearls in a container, in a colander, whatnot. Cover it with a kitchen towel or a damp paper towel, and let it be ready for at least 15 to 20 minutes before you start cooking. So you may want to plan this out just a little bit, but once you have them pre-soaked, they soften up. And if you think that they start to dry a little bit, go ahead and kind of sprinkle a little water, as we will do in the recipe, and you're good to go. To start your recipe, you want a large wok-like container where you are able to mix things up. So I'm going to start this on a medium-high heat. If you don't have turmeric grita, just use ordinary ghee, but this recipe has to be made in ghee. You need about 3 to 4 tablespoons of it, and I'm going to put, since I don't need this for anything else, I'm going to stick it in here. And for those of you who have my book Crack the Code, you'll see this is kind of laid out in the code format. So follow along. As this warms up, I'm going to toss in about 2 large pinchfuls, which is about a tablespoon and a half of cumin seeds, so brown cumin seeds. You want them to sizzle in the ghee so you can see they're starting to do their dance in there. In here, I have some freshly pounded or freshly grated ginger. So I have about a tablespoon of fresh ginger. Fresh ginger is essential. I'm going to turn this back down because this can warm up really quickly. Curry leaves, kari patta, just literally take a few, toss them in there, they'll do their dance. In here, a pinch of turmeric, and I'm going to keep this down as low as I can so I don't burn my spices. And you can add either cayenne pepper or jalapenos if you wish. Either or is fine. It won't affect the recipe a whole lot. You want to move this around to make sure that your spices don't burn. And if you think that they're starting to burn, you literally take it off the stove. In here, I'm going to add hard-boiled sweet potato. The sweet potato was washed, sliced down, diced down to a manageable size, so it's not too big. And then I parboiled it to make sure that it had a minimal amount of time required in this cooking process here. At this point, this is already fragrant thanks to the ginger and the curry leaves in here. And while this is cooking, I'm going to go ahead and prep up the tapioca for it. This is the soaked tapioca pearls. Now, they are very absorbent. Think of these as like little bits of sponge. And for them to take on any more of the flavors, some of that needs to just directly be added in here. I'm going to stir this again for a minute, just so that nothing is sitting in one spot for too long. And I will add a teaspoon of sugar, that was sugar, salt to taste, you've seen me do this, and about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Now this is Meyer lemon juice, about 2 tablespoons in here. I'm going to go back and stir this. Now traditionally this dish is made with ordinary potatoes. And what I've learned to love is the fact that sweet potatoes adds a lot of nutrition back into your dish. Going back to the preparation on the tapioca pearls, I have some freshly grated coconut, and I'm just going to add that coconut in here. There's a reason for this. I don't want to deal with this towards the end, but let it sit here and get ready for the next steps. So I'm going to make room in my pan so that I expose some part of the pan that doesn't have any of the spices. And I added about a 1/4 cup of large peanuts into it. By doing this, I know this part of it with the sweet potatoes, etc., is all cooked or is reasonably cooked. Having them parboiled actually helps a lot. Now, all you need to do is cook this a little bit. What this also does is helps catch all of the ghee and the spices that may be stuck on the sides of your pan. So it's kind of doing a little trick here. And now I'm mixing it all in. Alright, so this is as good as I want it to be. And now comes the interesting part of putting this in here. All of the little bits and pieces were already in. This already has some lemon juice, salt, and sugar. And from Crack the Code, you know that's when you add everything in towards the end. Look at this bright thing. Isn't it pretty? Now, since there is this tapioca in here, tapioca pearls will literally suck up any of the oils or the ghee or the spices anywhere in the pan. But that also means that they might start burning, because this needs to cook for just a few more minutes for the flavors to all kind of just get married and all that. So I'm just going to add a spot of water. I added that into the pot just to be sure that things did not burn. I kicked the temperature back up. You can hear the spices kind of just trying to get stuck to the side of the pan. By moving it constantly, you're actually ensuring that everything gets mixed up really, really well. Isn't this colorful? It's going to get better. Now, I'm going to collect all of it, make sure that there are no parts that are not covered in spices, there are no errant bits, and I will cover it and steam it for a little less than a minute. I'm going to actually turn the heat up for just under a minute, and you can see this is going to fog up. We're going to add some cilantro, freshly done cilantro, and some pomegranate. Thanks to Melissa for providing the pomegranate that goes in here. You add it while you're serving. And this is washed in just the bits of cilantro in here. Cilantro adds a very nice fresh aroma. It has a very nice flavor. And what I like to do is typically wait till the very end, till I'm ready to serve, when I put the cilantro in, so the cilantro doesn't get too wilted. So I have a couple bowls ready here to go, and I will serve. We top this with some of the pomegranate seeds. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? You would want to eat the whole bowl up, and trust me, this makes a really nice, light, gluten-free meal that is filled with the goodness of all kinds of things. You have sweet potato, you have peanuts, you have pomegranate in here, you have tapioca. It's all really tasty. And of course, don't forget the main ingredient that does the trick on this one, the turmeric gritha. So now that you know the recipe how to make this and turmeric gritha, I bet you're going to make this more often than you think. Enjoy! Now, aren't those simple and tasty? I won't be surprised if you are rushing right this minute into your kitchen to make one or more of these dishes. Or something else perhaps from my cookbook. I hope you do. 7 Pots of Tea is written in a way so that you are going to rethink tea and rethink chai. Enjoy.